Alright gang, today we're going to walk through how to take a mock-up and implement it. So a mock-up is a pixel perfect design, and it might look like something like this where I have one image but the rest is kind of faked. But it's the next step after a paper prototype and wireframe. First you draw it and iterate and get some ideas. Then you come up with wireframes, so black and white, simple representations of what these pages might look like. And then you put flesh and bones on them. So you can see here in this little sample I put together in Illustrator, I have a color palette, I've chosen some typography, and I started to fill in things that were just wireframes, just big boxes with some actual examples. And so I'm going to kind of scroll around and show you what I've come up with. So you see my solution is going to be providing lots of different recipes that are kind of the recipes that people might want. At the bottom is a next, so you can get more recipes. And you can see that I have this hover state, so when you roll over a recipe that you want, it kind of rotates the image a little bit, and I can click select recipe. And so this is what I'm going to implement in HTML first, and then I'll build a CSS on top of it. The HTML is relatively simple. It's just going to be the image for this right here. These three options is the little tabs, a little bit of text, and then each one of these is going to be its own block level element that's going to sit next to each other. And then those block level elements each have titles, little descriptions inside of them, an image inside of them, and then a big old go button. So I'm going to switch over and build this all in HTML. Alright, so let's talk about actually implementing this sucker. So we have the design right here. Let's talk about building out our HTML for it. So when you think about it, I got a couple things I can worry about. I got this, that's one element. This row of navigation is another element. And then all this big body, this big block here behind everything is a big old element, and then it has a bunch of children, all these little teeny tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and build this out. You can get started in however you care to. I just have an empty HTML document right here that I have done nothing on. Let me just really quickly show you how this document is set up. So I have my project folder, and inside of this document we're looking at here, and then I have an empty styles.css file. It's just an empty text file that I've created, and an image folder that has nothing in it. So we're looking at index.html here, and let's go ahead and do our standard stuff. Now you might want to choose to just grab some of your work from before and copy paste it. You might have honestly, when I do this in real life, instead of for class, I'll have kind of a template that I'm using and kind of basing everything off of. That's my templated folder structure and empty HTML that looks kind of like this and all that kind of stuff. But I figure for you guys, might as well start just totally fresh. The head is where the name that the page is bookmarked is going to go. The browser also displays the name of that in different tabs. I'm going to give that the title Recipeasy because I like dad jokes. All right, and so then I'm going to get into the body. So let's start designing this. I'll start out with this. So that's a big old headline. Might as well call that H1. And I'm kind of thinking future forward. I'm kind of thinking about how I'm going to set this thing up for CSS. And so I kind of want to wrap that H1 inside of a tag. I'll call that header. Header is usually what we use for that top stuff at the top. And then I'm going to move on to the nav right here, my navigation. Now that I see this in design, I don't like this 1, 2, 3, so in my implementation I'm going to skip that. But that is nav, and so I like to use the nav tag for global navigational elements. I could use header, nav, etc. if I wanted to, or I could just use divs and have IDs for each one of these things. I think it's more descriptive to do it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. And the idea of this is that these things are linearly navigated. So first you choose recipes, then it generates a list of ingredients that you take to the grocery store, and then it will help you make the recipes. Well, that's a linear process. First do this, then do this, and do this. So I'm going to make that nav be an OL. That just reinforces to me as the person writing the code this is a linear thing. And I'm going to copy paste this so I don't have to do it 3 times. And the ordered list. Change this out. And make recipes is what that says. All right, now for my main content, this big blob down here, I'm going to use a tag called section for that. There's no good reason to use section. I'm just choosing just to make it like this is one section of the page. It might be different from another section of the page. Paragraph tag, and then grab this copy so I don't have to retype it. Copy, paste, and the paragraph. And then I have these things, these hamburger, pizza, what's it say? Hamburger, pizza, fajita, chicken pasta. You know, now that I think about it, section doesn't make a lot of sense. How there's two tags that kind of go hand in hand. One is called article that you use for like big chunks of stuff, and then each section, and then inside of an article is multiple sections. So I'm going to make each one of these cards be a different section. And I'll give the title of the recipe here. And then I'll have the image in here. I don't have that ready, so I'm going to skip that, and then the link. And when I have a link that doesn't go anywhere, I just use pound for the href. There's a complicated reason for that, but you don't need to worry about it. Now that I think about it, though, section isn't a very good descriptor because section to me communicates like big chunks of things, and these are little teeny cards. So I'm going to keep this as section, but then each one of those little cards I can put in their own div and give them a class. In this section, just for my own sanity, I'll give this an ID and call it, because there's only one of them, I'll call it all recipes. Great. And so each individual recipe here, copy and paste. So I got 4 copies of it. The first one's hamburger, the next one's pizza, the next one's fajita, and the last one's what? Chicken pasta. And I'll save that, load it up in my browser. Okay, I see nothing that looks like a problem. That looks pretty good. So next I'm going to fire up my CSS. All right, now my CSS is going to be the bulk of my work in this sucker. And so I need to remind myself what I got. So I'm going back to my mockup. I got like a big thing up here, navigation next to each other, paragraph of text, individual cards. Each one of those cards has a handful of different elements. And I don't see anything that I don't know how to do. I'm in Illustrator here, but so I can easily grab each one of these things, and let me pull this into the recording. So I can easily grab this palette here and double click to get its color. And when I do that, it goes to the color picker, and there's the hexadecimal equivalent. So I can easily grab those colors. So I'll start at the top and work my way down. Recipe right here is in this color. Double click, and so I've copied that red color to my clipboard, and I'm going to go into my project. I have an empty styles file here. I'll go ahead and open that. And I'm going to have that up next to my HTML document. Whoopsie, that's not right. Please hold. Wrong styles file. Looking at the wrong project. Sorry about that. All right. I got no CSS, I got no styles file, so I need to go ahead and make that. In TextMate, I'm going to go File New. This could be your text editor of choice. Give it a save. Drop it into the CSS folder. Great, inside of my project. And if I check out in my Finder, you see now that's sitting there. Great. And I'm going to link these two together. I can never remember the code for a link, so I always Google it. But it is this right here. And so this will link the HTML document to this style sheet, so I can have an external style sheet. To make sure it's working, I'll just do the old body star border 1 pixel solid red. This will just make it sure everything has a big red outline around it, just to make sure that we're working. Great. Okay, so let's start with this H1 and get its styling all done right. So I'm going to grab this color out of the Illustrator document. And that's the H1 in the header. Even though I only have one H1 in this document, just to be safe, I'm just going to say it needs to be that inside the header. There's my hexadecimal. Let's add a font. I know that that's Georgia. I'm going to guess it's around 36 pixels. And if we don't have Georgia, we'll fall back to just any old generic serif font. Save. Refresh. All right, that looks pretty good. I would bring in an image or something like that for that big circle, but this is good enough for what we're doing. Now let's do the navigation. Now I need to analyze this a little bit, think about my navigation. This looks like a great opportunity for Flexbox because I want these three things to be next to each other. And the individual LIs are the things that are going into coloring in the borders. You can also see I have this kind of curved border, so we're going to have to do a little bit of Googling to figure out how to do that. But it's not tricky, and I know that it's totally doable. So let's get our color out. And you'll see that this document, in this document I have two colors. There's the fill color and the stroke. So there's the stroke, that's the border. We'll need to get that in a second. But we're going to be modifying LIs that are inside of nav instead of OLs. There we go. And we have a border color as well. I look at my design, and you can see that the border does not go all the way around around this button. This first one doesn't have anything along the bottom. So I'm going to do a little modification of my border, and I'm going to say the border along the top looks like that. I don't think we've done individual controls of border, but this is possible. Right and left, but nothing along the bottom. And then I have the color for the font itself, so I'm going to select that, double click, grab that, cut, copy, paste. Okay, should be coming kind of cranking along. Great, that looks good. I want to kill these numbers over here, and even though the numbers are in the design, I'm not wild about them, so I'm going to just kill them in my implementation. You can see I need to have some more spacing around the text. I got to get these curvy edges, and I got to get them all lined up next to each other. So we'll start with getting rid of those numbers. That's list style type none. And then I'm going to kill all the margin, so it's all the way on the left-hand side, all the padding, so it's all the way on the left-hand side. Also, the ordered list itself, not the individual elements, has some padding and margin on it, so I need to get rid of that too. Cool, that's looking good. And then I want these things to sit right next to each other. That's Flexbox. So I look at this, and Flexbox takes a parent, and you set a parent to flex, and then the children's flex. So the parent is the OL, the children is the LI. So I got that right here, nav OL, display flex. And kablamo, they're all next to each other. Now I need some space around the words, but still have the background color, so that it looks like this. That's padding, because padding stretches out the size of an object. Oops, so I said padding 0, really I meant, let's say 15 pixels. Great. That's looking pretty good to me. I want that font to be a little bit bigger, so I'll kind of crank it up a little bit. Looks a little big, but that's all right. That looks good. I just need to get these roundy edges. So let's go ahead and do those rounded edges. That's called border radius. And it looks like this. Now the thing is, border radius by default will make these pills where it wraps every single edge with a border radius. First of all, that border radius is too big, so I'm going to crank that sucker down to like, I don't know, 8 or so. But also, I don't want any border radius on the bottom. I just want it on the top. So border radius works like padding a margin, where I can declare it in once and it applies to all 4 sides, or I can break it up. And how, in the same way that margin and padding work like top, right, bottom, left, border radius works top left, right, bottom left. Same kind of basic idea, around the clock. And so I'm just going to do that and say, okay, top left, keep it 8. Next is top right, keep it, we'll make that 8 as well. Bottom right will be 0 pixels, and bottom left will be 0 pixels. Save, 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 refresh. All right, we're starting to look like what we want, starting to look like little tabs in a recipe book. Next, let's go ahead and style all of this stuff. So I'll look at my design, and this entire big old thing has the same background color as the LIs do. So I'm going to take the background color off the LIs and apply it to the entire thing called section. So that's all recipes. Oh no, I'm sorry, to the article, my bad. Paste. You can see also here, there's curvy edges. Let me get this out of the way. There's a curvy edge there. There's one at the bottom on both sides. But there isn't one up here at the top. So I'll do border radius there again. Steal this code, copy, paste. Only this time top left is 0, top right is 8, bottom right is 8, bottom left is 8. Save, refresh. Okay, that's starting to look good. Boom, boom, boom. We got some space up here at the top. I think that's probably margin on the article, so I'm going to kill that. Nope, I'm wrong. I'm not quite sure what that is. So sometimes we have space like that and you can't figure it out. A great trick is to use border, the border everything. So draw a red border around everything. Get a sense of where the problem is. Oh, that tightened it up. I don't know what's causing it, but I do know that border seems to be fixing it. The good news is I had to put a border around this sucker. So I have border right here. That's that very faint white color right there. You can see it also continues along here and all the way around this edge too. So that on the article wraps around everything. So not just top border top, but everything gets that wrap. Save. Refresh. All right, starting to work. Now I need to make it so there isn't this little section right here, but we'll figure that out later. Let's go ahead and get the paragraph styled. So let's check this out. You can see the paragraph is set in a sans serif font, probably Helvetica, and it's not in black. It's in this. It is in Helvetica, and it's in this kind of dark brown color. So I'm going to copy that, and that's the paragraph in the article. Probably about 14 pixels. Not bold or anything. If you don't got Helvetica, fall back to Arial. If you don't have that, fall to sans serif. Cool. You can see in my design that everything is kind of indented a little bit. So that's padding on that article. So I'm going to bump up the padding a little bit. And then the paragraph is indented even more, so I'm going to put some padding around, a little extra padding around it. And we have that. It's probably too extreme. I'll crank that back a little bit. We'll say the paragraph doesn't have any padding at the top, just on the right and the bottom, and none at the bottom, and on the left. That should probably get closer to my design. Yeah, it's closer. There's still a little too much up here, so that's on the article. Do the exact same thing. So the entire article pushes everything in 15 on the left and the right, or on the right and the left, and then the paragraph pushes in extra. So it looks like that. I forgot to save. Okay, that looks better. Okay, now let's get these individual cards all set up. So all recipes is sitting right here. It's going to be a parent of these individual cards. It's a great use of Flexbox. So this is the parent, these are the children. Let's go ahead and do it. So that is individual recipe, or I'm sorry, all recipes is an ID. And it's going to display as a Flexbox. Let's check it out. That will make all the other ones stack next to each other. Now I don't want them all bumping up against each other, so I need to give them some space. And I need to give them a background color. So let's go ahead and get styling on these suckers. Double click, get the background color. So that's a class, so it's dot. Background color. This will help me just kind of, from a design standpoint, as I'm building it, kind of visualize what's going on. Uh-oh, did I forget to save? Yeah, there we go. Now they're all bumping up against each other, so that's margin. Now what's awesome is that with Flexbox I can use auto margin, and what it'll do is take all the space that's over here and evenly distribute it as space around each item. Another thing that I have with Flexbox is that each one of these, its width is being determined by the widest part of its text. That's not exactly right because, you know, instead of difficulty, you might choose another word besides very easy that might be shorter, or another time duration that might be longer. And it'll make it these things have varying widths. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and give each one a width of a particular pixel measurement. We'll say 200 pixels. We'll say that because I know that's what it is because that's what I designed it to be. And save it. And then we'll use margin auto to evenly distribute that extra space on the right and left side of each one of these things. Ba-ding. All right, now we're talking. That's starting to look pretty good. All right, let's apply our border radius tricks to each one of these cards, and let's change the colors and fonts of all this stuff. And then last, we'll style the button. So let's put some border radius on. I want the same border radius everywhere, so I'm not going to do the thing where I break it all apart. Just say everything has a 10 pixel radius. That looks good. Look at my design. What else I got to worry about? There's a drop shadow. We'll put that in a second. I want to worry about this and this and this. So let's start with the titles. Use that blue color. Copy. The titles are H2s. So inside of individual recipe, all my H2s I want to behave like this. And I want the font to be, where's my Georgia font? Right there. You know, we're doing 20 points. I'm going to move this up so you can see it better. We're doing 20 points for this choose your recipe thing. So we can crank that back a little bit, maybe 18. That's about right. Again, I keep on forgetting to save. Save. What the heck? Let me spell that. H2s inside of individual recipes. That should be working. Oh, I forgot the Terminator. Gets you every time. Little things like that. Okay, there we go. Hamburger. Now let's get these H3s that are how difficult and how much time it takes. So I look at that, that's a sans serif, that's my Helvetica font again. And the color is this dark greeny brown. Copy. Repurpose this. I have a clipboard manager, so I won't do that. Just do it this way. Because you guys don't have that. Alright, copy. That's the color. And it's that smaller font. It's probably more like 12 pixels. Helvetica, then Arial, then sans serif. Boom. Looking pretty good. I'm liking it. And then we need to get the select recipe button working. So let's go ahead and wire that up. Select recipe has all the same kind of stuff that we've been doing, only it's got this kind of, you can see it's kind of displayed like this. So I'm going to take a look at it. It's filled with white. It's got this red color. Copy that. You can see the selected recipes have a different look to them. So this one, I'm rolling over it. This one has been selected because we're going to kind of assemble a bunch of recipes before you hit buy ingredients. So I'm going to have to style these two differently just so I know that I have them. But, and you know, for our purposes, you don't need to program that actual selection. Just style it so it looks like you're making selections. I'm going to take a look at this sucker and say that's an A tag. So the individual recipes. The A. Now A is an inline element by default. So I'm going to change it using display to force it to behave like a block element. And that allows me to do things like border and radius and all that kind of stuff that would be problematic on inline elements. I'm also going to turn off the underline. That's text display and set it to none, so I don't want it to underline my button. I want my color to be this, that red color. I want the background color to be white. I could use the word white. I just like to use it to do this. Since I'm measuring everything else in hexadecimal, might as well do that too. And then the border, it was a little bit thicker if I remember right, so we're going to say that's 2 pixels. Solid, same red color. Save. Refresh. Alright, starting to look good. For some reason that's underlined. I don't know what that's about. We'll fix that. Oh, not text display, text declaration. Sorry. There we go. I want some more padding around this button, and I want to increase the margin so it comes in off the sides a little bit. Get around the edges, and then we're pretty close to what I want, and get the right font. So the font looks about the same thing as this hamburger, so that's H2, so I'm going to steal that. And I want it to kind of be bumped in from the edge, so that's padding. I'll bring it in a little bit. Okay. I want the text to be centered. That's text align. Centering text, text align controls how the text works inside of a block level element. So setting this to center doesn't center the element, it just centers the text inside the element. So text align center. Boom. Roundy edges, great, we already know how to do that. We've been doing that this entire little project. So I'm going to go up here and grab border radius, paste. I want it to be the same border radius all the way around. Save, refresh. And then it's indented a little bit inside of the card. So what I'm going to do, all this is supposed to be indented, so I'm going to increase the padding on the card itself. There we go. That's looking good. I'm pretty happy. Next I need to make it so it looks like, that looks so big compared to that. So I'm going to crank that font size down on that button. Just a little bit. That looks better. And then I need to make a state when you roll over or when this is selected, it's that inverted. It looks like that. Now we can't control, at least with what you know so far, if things are selected or not. So we're going to fake it. And so in my CSS on the pizza, I have a class of individual recipe, but also, we haven't talked about this, I can apply more than one class to any element and use separated by spaces. So I'm going to say this is not only an individual recipe, but also the class selected. And what I'm going to do with the class selected is really simple. I'm just going to give it a different background color. So instead of being a background color of white like I do for normal, I'm going to give it the same background color as the text is in the other one, that pink color. And I'm going to make it so the color of the text is white. Save, refresh. Did save this. Refresh. Whoopsie! I put on the wrong thing. If this div is selected, I want to not change the entire selected. I want to change just the A tag inside of selected. That ought to do it. So now just the A tag changes. Great, great, great. Last couple things, I want to have a drop shadow. And so I can never remember the code to make a drop shadow, so I always Google it. And I want to get a generator so I don't have to remember how to do it. So I'm going to use this one. This gives me like real-time preview. So you can see right there, it's drop shadow. I don't want it to be anywhere that extreme. All these extreme samples always look so heinous. I'm going to bump up its radius so it kind of spreads out a little bit more. And increase the spread radius so it goes out a little bit more. And then crank down this opacity a ton. So it's very subtle. Looks good. And I'll grab this. Now it has the browser prefixes stuff of WebKit and Mozilla. Not the end of the world. I'll bring it even though it's not really necessary anymore. And it goes on the individual recipes themselves. Save. Couple ammo. That looks pretty good. Now I would, for our purposes, for your purposes, have images that I would put in here. And you can see that these images need to be rotated and have some styling on them, have this little border and all that kind of stuff. You can worry about that, but right now I've hit the major things, which is color and layout and those kinds of stuff. And along the way, you'll notice that really we didn't learn that much new. We covered border radius, which was new. We covered having more than one class on a given element that was new. But that was basically it. Everything else we've already talked about. And so like I've been saying, in a lot of ways, code is like Taco Bell. You just take the same ingredients and refactor them in a bunch of different ways and call it a new element. So looking through this, there isn't anything totally new that you guys learned in CSS. In HTML, we've talked about nav, but not extensively, and header, but not extensively, but we covered those again. We haven't talked about article or section, but we talked about both of those. Those are just generic placeholders that typically have sections inside of articles, although that's not required. And that's about it. So, in the amount of time of this video, we cranked out this entire page, which I know that I've been doing this a long time so I can work faster than you. But if you know what you're doing and take things one small step at a time, testing as you go, you'll be able to make through this stuff pretty quickly.